All right, so in today's video, we're gonna be breaking down legendary gems. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misconceptions behind legendary gems. I'm gonna make it sound so simple, so easy. What gems are good for PvE? What type of gems you want to look for if you're going for PvP type builds? What classes use certain gems? Because there's certain gems that will give your class absolutely no value whatsoever. So you obviously don't want that gem on your build, right? Hopefully that makes sense. We're gonna go ahead and check out legendary gems. 1-stars are the most common, right? Whether you're spending money or whether you're crafting, 1-stars are the easiest to get. These will always be 1-star. You can't have a 5-star trick shot gem, for example. So these will always be 1-star. Your 2-stars will always be 2-stars. The only thing that changes is the rank. So you can have a 2-star rank 10 bloody reach, for example, but you can't have a 5-star bloody reach. Hopefully that makes sense. These are the ones that can change though. These are the big boys. These are not only the rarest to get, but they're the most expensive, but for good reason. They're the most broken and OP gems you can get, but we'll get to that in a second. The ones that aren't good, we're not even gonna waste our time. This video is already gonna be long enough as it is. Zodstone, absolute trash. I would not look at upgrading that at all. If you wanna know what it does, you can go ahead and just click on and read it, but it's really not worth any investment. Karasin's Invigoration is though. This is a very decent 1-star gem, very easy to get. You can craft it, or you can buy it for I think less than 1,000 platinum right here in the market. But what does it do? It increases the speed of your primary attack by 5.5%. That's good. That is solid. And what's nice about gems like this is it's always on. There's no RNG. There's no percentage of something to happen. It's always turned on, which is great. So this is a solid gem, very obtainable. Defiant Soul, absolute trash. Respite Stone, also trash. All right, and the next one is Pain of Subjugation. This is a decent 1-star legendary gem, especially for PvP type builds. Why? Because you deal more damage. You deal 5.5% more damage to enemies suffering loss of control. For example, stuns. On my Crusader build, I have a couple abilities where I will stun the enemy. When they're stunned, when I hit them, I do more damage. Great in PvP. All right, next up is Trick Shot Gem. This one is definitely not my favorite, simply based on the fact that it's very specific, which has to do with channeled skills, and it consumes 8.5 or consumes energy 8% slower. So just, I mean, there's a lot better options. You're just not getting that much value. If this is all you have, sure, go ahead and throw it on your build. But I definitely invest more resources other places. Speaking of which brings me to probably my favorite 1-star legendary gem of the lot. All right, so what does it do? It increases all damage you deal by 5.5%. But it increases the damage you take by 5%. Once you rank this up, all these gems I'm just talking about like how they are at rank 1 base. However, since I've ranked mine up, this actually increases to where you deal 10% more damage across the board on everything, and you take 5. So as you rank these up, the properties do get a lot better. However, my favorite part about these style gems is the fact they're always turned on. There's no RNG. You have a 5% chance of this to happen. They're just always active, and I really like that. You don't have to wait for cooldowns and things like that. Celad's Weakening is decent. This one I do know for a fact is in the Battle Pass. So everybody watching this video, more than likely at this point, has a Celad's Weakening. What does it do? You gain 6% increased damage for 60 seconds after killing an elite monster. Now, this is probably the reason why it is free with the Battle Pass. It's not the worst. It's by far not the greatest. But again, when we're talking about gems like Celad's Weakening, this is 100% for PvE. If you are building a character, or if you're building your class for PvP, this will never turn on, ever. Because you get increased damage. You get a 6% increase in damage for 1 minute after you kill an elite monster. There's a lot of things that have to happen in order for this gem to be active. But when you look at Berserker's Eye, so you gain 6% increased damage, but look at Berserker's Eye. Increased damage 5.5%. But the difference is this one's always turned on. This one, you have to kill an elite monster. What do we have? Mocking Laughter. Here's another one. Primary attack forces non-elite monsters it hits to attack you for 2 seconds. This is great, again, for PvE in a party. So if you have a tanky build, say like a barbarian or a crusader, for an example, this will be great because it makes it to where when you're attacking monsters, you basically aggro everybody onto you, and you know, your wizards and your demon hunters and some of the more squishier classes can go ahead and start raining down shots. So this one is definitely decent, but more specifically if you're in a big party. All right, next one up. Again, I just would not invest in something like this, man. Everlasting Torment. So the only way this one works is if you crit. So if you get a crit, you're going to deal 10% more base damage, which you can find under your attributes. So 10% of your base damage plus an additional 122 damage for every 6 seconds. So it's kind of so it deals more damage over time, but you can't do it more than every 20 seconds. Again, I wouldn't waste time doing that. All right, next up is Chain Death. Again, you can read this one. I would not waste my time upgrading Chain Death. Same thing with Nightmare Wreath. Just a lot of things have to happen in order for this to even be turned on. And the reason why I don't like this one is because enemies start running away from you. And in most cases, you don't want that to happen. So again, just not worth the investment. This one I absolutely love though. It's up there with Berserker's Eye for me, which is Black Rose. What's nice about this is it works for PvE and PvP. It says each time you are attacked, you have a 10% chance to summon vines that immobilize the attacker for basically a second. Each enemy can't be affected by this more than every 20 seconds. So again, what's good about this is not only does it work for PvE builds or PvP builds, this is what I'm talking about. This is not always turned on. There is a percentage chance for this to happen, but it can happen a lot, especially with mobs. All right, when you're running through these dungeons, a 10% chance. If you're going up against 10 monsters, you're gonna have a great chance at summoning those vines to basically, and this is another version of Loss of Control. Black Rose, I actually have it on my Crusader build. Love that one. All right, next up is Freedom and Devotion. This is perfect, and this is ideal for people that have classes like the Necromancer, or if you are summoning a Guardian, you know, that fights by your side. I actually have a skill equipped to my Crusader right now that does just that. This is the perfect gem just to make them last a little bit longer, because often they don't even die. The reason why your summons go away, it's because they time out and you know they leave. So this will increase that. All right, so that wraps up for the 1-star gems. Now we're gonna hop into all the 2-star gems, starting with Power and Command. Probably my least favorite out of the bunch, simply based on the fact that it kind of goes back and forth between your primary attack getting increased for a duration of time, and then after that, it goes to your skilled attacks being increased for a duration of time. It's 9 seconds. So definitely not my favorite. Just bounces back and forth. It never seems to be on the one that you want it to. All right, and next one we're going to break down is Follower's Burden. This one is pretty much only for the Necromancer, and I'll go ahead and tell you guys why. But other classes should never use Follower's Burden. It says increases all damage you deal by 1% for each summon you control, for up to a maximum increase of 6%. So if you're a Necromancer and you have, you know, a bunch of skeletons that you have fighting for you, plus you got a golem on the field, you're gonna do a significant amount of increased damage, up to 6%, which is solid. But if you're like my Crusader, where I have one of my skills where I summon one Guardian, 1% increased damage, that it's not worth it. You're not even gonna feel it. That's a tickle, you know, especially with, again, going back to Berserker's Eye, this gives you 5.5% increased damage, and that's a 1-star gem. This is a 2-star gem. So again, unless you're the Necro, I would not mess with Follower's Burden. The Hunger is okay. It's more for like doing solo stuff. If you're in a party, you wouldn't need this. But the problem is it procs only every 20 seconds. I wish that cooldown was a lot better. Maybe it does if you rank the gem up. but you do heal by 40% of base damage plus 567 for each time you defeat an enemy. So again, this is really great if you're doing solos, and especially if you've already used up your heals. If you kill an enemy, you're going to get a fat, juicy heal, but it's only every 20 seconds. And when you're in those rifts, 20 seconds seems like an eternity. Bloody Reach, again, this is going to be very class specific. If you're a melee class, you should never, ever, ever use Bloody Reach. You won't get the value. This is more for like your wizards, your necros, and for your demon hunters, especially demon hunters. It says increases all damage you deal by 2% for every 2 yards between you and the enemy. Boom, that is so solid. It makes me want to build a demon hunter just so I can equip this Lego gem. So if you have 10 yards between you and the enemy, that will give you an increase of 10% damage. That is broken good, and it's pretty common. The 2-star gems are very common, and they're also easy to make as well. And you can buy them how much are they? Let's see. Look, for less than 4,000 platinum, you can purchase them all day long. Battle Guard is also solid. I've actually even considered putting Battle Guard on my build. So what does Battle Guard do? It decreases all melee damage you take by 8% from enemies within 3 yards. So this is very, very good. Most mobs are melee. So if you're a wizard, or if you're something like a demon hunter, this would not be a good choice for you, because most of your attacks, you're not going to be within 3 yards. You're going to be much further than that. So again, melee classes, this is fantastic with damage mitigation. Unity Crystal, you and all party members take 0.5% reduced damage per additional party member within 6 yards of you. This might actually be worse than Power and Command. This is probably my least favorite out of the 2-star gems. I mean, you're talking 0.5%, and when you think of a party, other than Lassel, Flame Tongue, the majority of your parties are only going to have 4 people in it. So you're talking a 2% reduced damage, and plus they have to be within 6 yards of you, the party members. But there's often times where you guys are kind of split up and you're not all within. So unless you're like a Lasso Flame Tongue god and you're trying to go for some world record or something, Unity Crystal, I wouldn't even bat an eye. I would immediately get Gem Powder for this and rank up something else. That's all I would use Unity Crystal for. Cutthroat's Grin is solid. I actually have it in my build. It is slightly specific, but very, very solid. So you gain an 8% increased critical hit chance when attacking from behind. Not only does this work great for PvE or PvP in parties, why? Because if you're going up against a mob that's aggroed onto someone else, you come in despite what build you have or what class you're running. So you basically come in there and just start critting all over the place from behind. Very, very solid. Specifically with the Crusader, with the Draw and Quarter skill, which is most common on any Crusader build. It seems like when you're looping around all the enemies, you seem to be hitting a lot of them from behind anyway. And you just seem to pop crits off all over the place. And as you rank this up, the crit chance increases as well. Very, very good 2-star gem. This one is also on my build. I love Lightning Core. It says your primary attacks and movements slowly charge you up with electricity. Once you're fully charged, your next primary attack will release a lightning chain, dealing 90% of your base damage plus 1100 to nearby enemies. This cannot occur more than once every 20 seconds. So again, great for PvE or PvP, and it seems like it procs all the time. All right, let's go ahead and start off at the very top, you guys, with my #1 most favorite legendary gem out of the lot. We're talking Phoenix Ashes. I was so lucky to even pick this thing up. What does it do? It basically prevents you from being one-shotted. It's completely broken. So think of bosses like Lasso the Flame Tongue, or some of these Rift Guardian bosses, or if you're trying to rank up in the Path of Blood, for example, you can't be one-shotted when you have this legendary gem equipped on your build. It says prevents fatal damage. So not only does it prevent fatal damage, it then grants you a shield for a whole 6 seconds that absorb even more damage, equal to 450% of your base damage. So we're talking thousands here, you guys. So if you pick this thing up, 9 times out of 10, you'll definitely be equipping it on your build. Again, great for PvE and PvP. All right, so next up is Chip of Stone Flesh. Again, this can be great for PvE or PvP as long as you have a skill or an ability that causes loss of control. That's the main thing. So each time you cause an enemy a total loss of control, you'll also apply an explosive curse. I would say it's underwhelming compared to some of the other 5-star legendary gems, but still it can do a ton of damage in the right situation. All right, so now we're going to knock out 2 gems at the same time. We're going to break down Howler's Call and Zwenson's Haunting because they're so similar, but I'm going to show you guys what the difference is and which one I like better. All right, so what is the big difference between the two, in case you guys missed it, is for Zwenson's Haunting to proc, you have to kill an enemy. Whereas Howler's Call, you just have to be using your primary attack and you have a 10% chance of it proccing. So if you're taking on a mob with Howler's Call, if you're taking on a mob and you're hitting 10 enemies, say at once, it's almost a guaranteed chance that this is going to proc, and you don't have to kill an enemy at all. Plus, if you look at the difference in damage, 150% base damage plus additional 1,400. Whereas Zwenson's Haunting is only 50% base damage and a whole 1,000 less than Howler's Call. This only does 486 AoE damage. So if I had to pick between the two, I would definitely go Howler's Call, which can be used in PvE or PvP, just as long as you're using your primary attack. All right, so now we're going to hop into probably one of the most, I'd say the biggest fan favorite legendary gem, one of the rarest for them to drop, and one of the most busted good, whether it's for PvE or PvP. We're talking Seeping Bile. What does it do? Your attacks have a 4% chance to poison enemies, inflicting 25% of your base damage, plus it has damage over time. So we're talking over 1,200 damage over the course of 6 seconds. And what's more broken than this, especially in rifts where you're going up against mobs, is it has a poison spread. So if the victim dies from the poison, it's going to keep poisoning other enemies. And I've seen it. I mean, we're talking 10 yards down the line, you'll see this green explosion just popping off everywhere. So it's great when you're dealing with a ton of mobs, but it's also good in PvP as well. This is, again, probably one of the most sought after gems next to Blood-Soaked Jade. All right, so moving on to Blessing of the Worthy. What does it do? This is more for melee classes. So the more damage you take, the more damage you're going to give back to the enemy. So if you're a tanky build like a barbarian, like a crusader, or in some cases like a monk where your HP is just through the roof, the higher the life. It also comes down to Paragon levels, how much life you're putting on your character. The more life you have, the more damage you're going to give back to the enemy. So this could be busted, broken good, but you really have to build your entire character around something like Blessing of the Worthy. This isn't something you would do like kind of at a whim. But if built right, this is completely broken. Blood-Soaked Jade, I would say out of them all, okay, this is probably the #1 most rarest for this to even drop, just period. Especially when you look at like costs. If you look at the cost of these in the market, it's almost double, sometimes triple what the cost of other five-star legendary gems go for. All right, so let's take a look at why this gem is so good and so rare and why so many people want this thing. It basically increases not only the damage you deal, but also your movement speed, which is huge. If you look at this, it increases your movement speed by 10%. And this is always on. Nothing else has to happen for this to proc. You just instantly become faster. So not only that, and think about how many areas of the game you want to move faster. Basically every area of the game. So on top of your increased movement speed, you're always going to deal more damage. The only thing that changes is based on how much life you have. So if you're full health, you'll be doing 8% increased damage. And that's not only primary attack, but also any skills that inflict damage. If you've lost a bunch of life, the minimum amount of damage increase will go down to 4%. Blood-Soaked Jade is so good. They could have just made this gem based off of increased movement speed, and it would still be broken. The fact that it also increases damage is crazy. All right, next up is probably one of my least favorite, I would say, just because, I mean, it's a lot to invest to upgrade legendary gems. I don't feel like this one really gives enough value for how much resources it takes in order to upgrade these things, let alone take up a gem slot. So you basically have, and plus it's not always turned on. It's something that has to proc. So your attacks, whether primary or a skill attack, it gives you a 15% chance to summon a shadow clone for 8 seconds that gains some of your abilities. So not only is the duration not very long, but basically you clone yourself for a very short period of time, plus you have a percentage for this to happen. So depending on your build and really what you're going after, I just don't see that many people investing a ton of resources trying to upgrade Echoing Shade. All right, so next up is Bottled Hope, which is kind of like, to me, it's kind of like a poor man's version, or like a Dollar Tree version of Blood-Soaked Jade. So what does it do? It says using a skill to grant a buff. So it already has a qualifier. So you have to have a skill that grants a buff. For example, like with the Crusader, the Holy Banner, right? That would be considered a skill that grants a buff. Increases the target's damage done and movement speed by 8%. Whereas Blood-Soaked Jade, this is always turned on. Movement speed increased by 10%, damage increased by 8%. The only difference is this only lasts for 6 seconds. And then it can only happen once every 20 seconds. Whereas Blood-Soaked Jade, but if you look at Blood-Soaked Jade, it's always active. So anyway, Bottled Hope, if this is all you have and you don't have a Blood-Soaked Jade, definitely use it. But yeah, definitely much better choices. And we already went over Zwenson's Haunting when we were talking about Howler's Call. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys thought of it down in the comment section.